Before we dive into today's intense story, a quick reminder, over 90% of our viewers watch our videos, but aren't subscribed. If you enjoy content like this, take a second to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. And if you find this story gripping, don't forget to like the video, it really helps us out. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman to sit down and tell the world how I destroyed my own marriage, but here I am, not out of pride, not out of shame either, more out of a strange desire for someone to understand. I wasn't always this version of myself, the woman with scars hidden under smiles. Secrets burning in my chest like a wildfire. I used to be calm, controlled, predictable. Maybe that was the problem. My name is Laura, and for 17 years, I was married to a man named Kevin. We were the kind of couple people used to envy. At least on the surface. To outsiders, Kevin was the ideal husband, steady, loyal, a man who worked hard, came home at a decent hour, remembered birthdays, smiled in pictures. I was the supportive wife. A schoolteacher by profession, someone who packed lunches, kept track of bills, and made sure our two children, Eli and Morgan, were always where they needed to be. We were ordinary, boring even, but reliable. That reliability began to crack the day I started to feel invisible. I don't mean that in a self-pitying way. I mean it in a literal, soul-numbing sense. Kevin stopped seeing me. He'd come home and talk about his day, watch the news, scroll through his phone, and retreat to bed before ever asking how I was. I tried to tell myself it was just the ebb and flow of marriage, that everyone goes through dull periods and it would pass, but it did in single quotes t. Instead, things got worse. Kevin became colder, more distant. He stopped eating dinner with us and started taking late meetings. When I asked what was going on, he'd shrug and say he was under pressure at work. I believed him at first. Why wouldn't I? But after months of this pattern, I started noticing things. A second phone, random credit card charges, a strange, unfamiliar cologne on his clothes. Not the kind he ever wore. I confronted him once, gently, nervously. He laughed, kissed my forehead, and told me I was being dramatic. Then he handed me flowers, cheap ones, bought from a gas station. I found the receipt in his jacket pocket later that night. I should have seen it then, right? I should have known. But the heart clings to hope even when the mind knows better. It wasn't until I found the email that everything fell apart. Kevin left his laptop open one evening, which he never did. He was in the shower. I don't know what compelled me to look. Maybe it was intuition. Or maybe I was just tired of pretending nothing was wrong. The email was short, but I read it a dozen times. Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you. I hate lying to her. Soon. That was it. No name, no details, but I didn't need them. I knew. I scrolled through more emails, hidden under a folder named invoices. There were dozens, photos, hotel receipts, messages from a woman who called him her piece. My stomach turned. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just stared at the screen like a woman who had been dropped into someone else's life. I heard the shower shut off and close the laptop. I went to the kitchen and made coffee. When Kevin came downstairs, I smiled and handed him a mug. Something shifted in me that night. I knew I was never going to beg. Never going to scream or throw things or compete with whoever she was. I had already lost something I couldn't name, and I wasn't going to lose my dignity, too. So I made a decision. I was going to take my time. I was going to play the part of the clueless wife while I prepared my revenge. It wasn't about rage. It was about justice, about showing him what it felt like to be treated like an option, about making sure he never forgot who he betrayed. For weeks, I gathered information. Quietly, carefully, I copied files from his laptop, recorded phone calls, took pictures of his meetings with her, who I soon discovered was a colleague named Teresa. She was younger, single, and apparently had no moral compass. I didn't blame her entirely. Kevin was the one who made vows to me, but she knew. I found messages where she mocked me, called me boring, predictable, even pitiful. I began to see clearly. Then, this wasn't just an affair. This was a decision to erase me, to humiliate me in private while pretending in public. And I couldn't stand it. So I began planning my own story. My exit. And his downfall. First, I met with a lawyer, a sharp, calculating woman named Denise, who didn't blink twice when I showed her the evidence. She told me to be patient, To build a case, we set up financial traps. Tracked hidden accounts, froze credit lines he thought I didn't know existed. I created my own accounts, secured assets, moved a portion of our savings legally into a trust for our kids. Kevin never noticed. He was too busy playing house with his side piece. I smiled through school events, hosted birthday parties, kept up appearances while documenting every inconsistency in his behavior. I began to gather allies quietly. Friends who once idolized our marriage now saw the cracks. I didn't tell them everything, just enough to plant seeds. Meanwhile, I started therapy not for the marriage but for myself. For the years, I had let myself fade into the background. I started running again, reading books that had nothing to do with parenting or teaching. I stopped apologizing for taking time for myself. I enrolled in a course for a new teaching certification that would let me transition into educational consulting. It was subtle, but it was mine, a piece of myself that didn't belong to Kevin. Then came the day I met Teresa face to face. It wasn't planned. I was picking up dry cleaning when I saw her step out of Kevin's car across the street. She looked surprised when our eyes met. Maybe she didn't recognize me at first. I walked straight up to her, calm as a whisper. She stiffened when I said her name. You don't need to worry, I told her. I'm not here to cause a scene. She blinked. Okay, I just wanted to see the woman my husband threw his life away for. She looked uncomfortable, and for a moment I saw fear flash in her eyes. I hope he's worth it, I said, because when I'm done, there won't be anything left for him to give you. I walked away before she could reply. After that, things moved quickly. Kevin sensed something was off. I stopped asking where he was going. I stopped waiting up. I became polite, distant, like a neighbor he barely knew. It unsettled him. He tried to re-engage, suddenly offering to take me on trips, complimenting my appearance, asking about my day. But it was too late. The night before I served him the divorce papers. I made him dinner, his favorite, lasagna, garlic bread, and that ridiculous lemon cake he always asked for. He ate it gratefully, not realizing it was our last meal as a married couple. I watched him eat and wondered how long it would take for him to realize what he had lost. The next morning, while he was in a meeting, a courier handed him the papers at his office. Inside the envelope were not only the divorce documents, but also a summary of the evidence I had collected. Every photo, every email, every phone log. Denise called it the portfolio. I called it closure. Kevin didn't come home that night. I wasn't surprised. The kids were at my sister's. And I sat in silence for hours, not crying, not rejoicing, just existing. It was a strange peace, knowing the worst was behind me and the rest was in motion. But my revenge wasn't over, not yet. I wasn't done making sure Kevin understood the weight of his decisions. And part 2 of my story is where I truly took back control, not just of my life, but of the image he thought he controlled. After Kevin received the divorce papers, everything changed. Not just for him, but for me too. That final act of serving him, of delivering the truth so precisely, so brutally, wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. He didn't come home for 2 days. No call, no text. I didn't expect one. He thought I'd break, that I'd panic or beg or somehow regret what I did. But I didn't. In fact, I had never felt more clear, more alive. My hands were steady. My heart no longer clenched at every passing thought. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was drowning in a life someone else had scripted for me. When Kevin finally did show his face, it was a pathetic performance. He stood in the doorway like a lost child, suitcase in hand, eyes red, mouth dry. I stood in the kitchen holding a cup of tea. Unmoved, I don't even know what to say. He muttered, then don't say anything. He hesitated. Can we talk, please? I gave a bitter laugh. You should save that voice for Teresa. Or did she run to? He didn't answer. I let him stay that night in the guest room. Not out of mercy. Just strategy? He still thought there was a path back. I needed that. It gave me the upper hand. Over the next few weeks, the unraveling began in earnest. At work, rumors started to circulate. A few anonymous packages, full of select evidence, made their way to HR and the company board. I didn't send them, of course. That would have been irresponsible, but someone did. And in a company that prided itself on family values and clean leadership, Kevin's affair with a junior employee didn't look good. Teresa, I heard, was reassigned to a less desirable department. Kevin was temporarily suspended while they reviewed the circumstances. The man who once strutted around with smug confidence now walked like someone expecting to be hit from behind, at any moment. He tried to salvage his image, both at work and at home, started coming to Ellie's soccer games again, tried taking Morgan to breakfast. He showed up at my school once with flowers and coffee. I accepted both, smiled, and then left them in the faculty lounge for anyone to take. That gesture got back to him, and he didn't try again. One night, he sat me down and tried a new tactic. He wasn't angry, he was desperate. I made the biggest mistake of my life, he said, thought I wanted something different. I was stupid, but I never stopped loving you. I met his eyes with a calm he couldn't understand. You didn't just cheat, Kevin, you erased me, mocked me, let another woman laugh at me, you made me a joke in my own life. I didn't mean, you meant every moment, you just didn't expect consequences. He stayed silent. I leaned back. You don't get to rewrite this story as a mistake. You lived in it, you chose it, you don't get to return now and pretend it was a detour. That night, he moved in with a friend. The house, per our pending agreement, would be mine, but I wasn't done yet. While Kevin's professional life crumbled, I quietly elevated mine, with the new certification I earned. I accepted a consulting role at a regional education board. More pay, more flexibility, and more independence. I didn't tell Kevin. He found out through a mutual acquaintance, and the confusion on his face when he tried to congratulate me was almost amusing. He wasn't used to seeing me succeed without his shadow cast over it. Meanwhile, I continued to guide our children through the chaos as best as I could. I never spoke ill of their father in front of them, but I didn't lie either. When Morgan asked why Daddy didn't live with us anymore, I said, sometimes people make choices that hurt others, and sometimes those choices mean they can't stay. Eli, older and sharper, saw through everything. One night, he asked me, are you mad at him forever? I paused. I'm not mad anymore. Just done. Kevin tried to delay the divorce proceedings, claimed emotional stress, asked for mediation, but Denise, my attorney, was a fortress. She moved dates forward, uncovered hidden finances, and even identified funds he had funneled into an account under a fake business name. When the court found out, he was slapped with penalties. He lost leverage, and quickly. It was around this time that Teresa messaged me. I wasn't expecting it. She sent an email through my work address, hoping I'd see it. The subject line simply read, I'm sorry. Inside, she wrote, I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know Kevin lied to both of us. He told me you were bitter, distant, and that your marriage was already over. I believed him. That doesn't excuse what I did. I just wanted you to know I've left the company and ended things with him. You didn't deserve any of it. I didn't reply. I had nothing to say. The final court date came on a rainy Tuesday morning. I wore navy blue and carried nothing but a slim folder. Kevin showed up looking thinner, grayer. His lawyer looked defeated before it even began. The judge reviewed everything, financials, custody agreements, the evidence of infidelity. It was all clean. Legal final. When the gavel hit the block, I felt no triumph, just release. Outside the courthouse, Kevin approached me. I didn't stop walking. Laura, he said, do you think someday, maybe? No, I interrupted. I won't pretend to know what the future holds. But I do know it won't include you. He nodded like he'd been expecting that. He walked one way, I walked the other, and still, the revenge wasn't complete. See, Kevin thought I had already hit him where it hurt, his reputation, his finances, his relationships. But he underestimated the real damage, his legacy, because I knew Kevin cared more about how people saw him than anything else, and I knew exactly how to control that. I compiled a narrative. Not exaggerated, not false, just honest, a carefully written account of what happened, stripped of venom, heavy with truth. I shared it with a few trusted individuals, mutual friends, colleagues, even a few of his extended family members who had always been kept at arm's length. No drama, just facts. The story began to travel. Quietly, people who once idolized him began to ask questions. His mentor, the one he always bragged about, stopped taking his calls. His sister, who had always defended him, messaged me to say, I'm so sorry, Laura, I had no idea. He became isolated. His image stained by nothing more than his own decisions, and that was the most fitting revenge of all. Not rage, not scandal, but clarity. By the time I moved into a new home, one with light-filled windows and a backyard that didn't echo with memories, I no longer thought about Kevin with pain. He was a closed book. A story I had read and put away. People often ask me how I stayed so composed through it all. The truth is, I didn't always. There were nights I cried into my pillow, mornings I wanted to scream. But I made a promise to myself, if I was going to lose the marriage, I wasn't going to lose myself. Kevin didn't destroy me. He revealed me, and the woman I became afterward. She's unstoppable. Time has a funny way of healing what once felt unbearable. It doesn't erase anything, but it smooths the sharp edges. 3 years have passed since the divorce, 3 years since I stepped out of the shell of who I used to be and built a new life, one brick, one breath, one deliberate choice at a time. I no longer wake up with a knot in my chest. I no longer flinch when I hear Kevin's name in passing. And when I look in the mirror, I don't see a wife who was betrayed. I see a woman who survived. In the months after the divorce was finalized, I threw myself into rebuilding, not out of desperation, but with purpose. I started small, repainting the kitchen walls, changing out the old photographs, planting a garden with flowers I liked, not what matched a catalog, not what Kevin would have chosen, just me. Morgan and Eli adapted better than I expected. Morgan, who had once cried herself to sleep when Kevin moved out, became warmer, more curious, more confident. Eli became my quiet supporter. We never spoke in detail about everything he'd seen or heard, but his presence said more than words. One night, as we watched a movie together, he casually said, "You're different now, Mom." Happier, lighter. I smiled. I am. I learned to appreciate solitude again. After years of compromise and suppression, the silence in my house didn't feel lonely. It felt peaceful. I could sit with a book for hours or sip tea on the porch and listen to the wind, and it would feel like mine. But even in the quiet, I didn't stop moving forward. I expanded my work in education, taking on projects that impacted curriculum reform and teacher training. I was invited to speak at conferences and eventually wrote a series of essays on educational leadership that caught attention in a few national circles. For the first time, I was building a reputation independent of anyone else's shadow. Kevin, meanwhile, continued to unravel in slow motion. After the divorce, he bounced from job to job. No one said it aloud, but his name had become a cautionary tale. His charm didn't hold weight the way it used to. People whispered, promotions slipped past him. The board that once called him a rising star now treated him like an expired idea. He tried to reinvent himself, moved to a smaller firm, started a podcast about leadership. But the audience was never big. The man who once held entire rooms in his palm was now just another voice in the noise. I didn't gloat. I didn't have to. Life was doing what it does best, handing back what was given. He emailed me once, about a year after the divorce. Subject: just wanted to say it was short, apologetic, meandering. He said he hoped I was happy, that he'd never stop regretting what he did, that he understood now what he threw away. I read it once and never responded. Some people might say I should have forgiven him, maybe even thanked him for setting me free, for forcing me to rebuild. But that's not how I see it. I forgave myself. That was enough. Kevin wasn't owed anything more. Teresa, as far as I know, moved back to her hometown. I heard she got married last year to someone else. I don't think about her much. She was a symptom, not the cause, a mistake made by someone who believed lies and helped destroy something that wasn't hers to touch. But I'm not haunted by her. The most satisfying part of it all wasn't Kevin's downfall. It was my rise. I learned that revenge doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't need to be vindictive or dramatic. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is to live so well, so fully, that the person who tried to diminish you becomes irrelevant in the brightness of your life. I joined a local women's support group, not because I needed it, but because I wanted to offer what I had learned. There, I met women from all walks of life, some betrayed, some lost, some just looking for the first step forward, and every time I told my story, I watched their faces change. Not because my story was unique, but because it proved that survival is possible, that even when your world collapses, you can build again. One woman, Jenna, had just discovered her husband's infidelity. She was shaking the first time she spoke. "How do you stop hating them?" she asked. I answered simply, "You don't hold on to the hate, you hold on to yourself. They don't deserve your energy. You do." The more I shared, the lighter I felt. Eventually, I started writing a book, not about Kevin, but about recovery, about how betrayal is not the end, but the middle of a very different story. One where you stop existing for someone else's convenience and start living for your own peace. It's still in progress, but it's honest, raw, and mine. Eli started high school this year. He's taller than me now, quiet but thoughtful. He wants to study architecture. Morgan wants to be a vet. I watch them grow into people who are kind, resilient, and unafraid to speak up. And I know with deep certainty that my choice to end the marriage didn't break them. It freed them. They see what strength looks like, not in silence or endurance, but in standing up and saying, no more. Every now and then, I run into people from the past, mutual friends, who still can't believe how it all turned out. One woman once asked, don't you ever wonder what would have happened if you stayed? I smiled. Number, because I know exactly what would have happened. I would have disappeared. Kevin was a chapter one I read thoroughly, painfully, but no longer reread. That story ended. The one I'm in now, it's full of color, it's complex, bold, and sometimes messy, but it's mine. And that is the best ending I could have written. I don't need revenge anymore because I won.